we're going to go ahead and jump into our speaker for tonight. Todd Staples is a name that a lot of us have heard for quite a long time. He is currently the Agriculture Commissioner. He's the 11th Texas Commissioner of Agriculture and was recently reelected to serve a second four-year term in this. It's a statewide election. Commissioner Staples believes the free enterprise system and individual responsibility are the keys to prosperity for Texas. He was born in Anderson County and was active in FFA, was elected state FFA vice president, attended A&M University, where he graduated with honors with a degree in agricultural economics. Commissioner Staples began serving in public office in 1989 when he was elected to the Palestine City Council. In 1995, he was elected state representative and served 3 terms in the Texas House before being elected state senator in 2000, where he served 2 terms. And currently he's Agriculture Commissioner. Following his first election in 2006, he was reelected to a second term in 2010. Commissioner Staples and his wife Janet have 4 grown children. So please help me welcome Commissioner Todd Staples.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, it's an honor to be back in Montgomery County this evening, and it's a privilege to get to visit with you and talk about the future of our great state, the future of our nation. I appreciate the fact that you all demonstrate how much you care. You really sent a message around the nation that people can make a difference in the outcome of elections. And that is a message that needs to be consistently told, consistently received by the voters to encourage them, because that's the only way that we can have thank you very much, a nation and a government that is responsive to its people, reminding them that government works for you, not the other way around. It's hard to believe, but that message does get lost. It's good to be back in Montgomery County. I did have the privilege of representing Montgomery County in Senate District 3 back in a 2000 election. That was an election that my own consultant said, don't run, you can't win. That was an election that every elected official in Montgomery County that endorsed my opponent. But it just goes to show you what grassroots can do in changing the outcomes of elections, because you don't care about titles, you don't care about what your last name is, what your zip code happens to be, you care about results. And that's the only way that we're going to have a state and a nation that we can be proud of. Y'all kind of proud to be Texans? Okay. You should be. We got a great deal to be proud of, much to be thankful for. And obviously, things are going well. We've got 1,000 people a day moving to the Lone Star State. We need to make certain that they think like us. We don't start thinking like them. That'd be problematic. We lead the nation in job growth. That's a good thing. And as proud as we are of people like Steve Toth, who I have had the privilege of meeting, and I know who you work for and who's representing your interest and others in Austin, nobody in Austin is the reason for all these good things that are happening. It's you, what you represent right here in this room, the hardworking families, the men and women of this state who believe in accountability, believe in making certain that government is responsive to the citizenry. Those of you that stood in parking lots today for a community college election because you believe in the process. That's what really is at stake when we think about the future of our state and the future of our nation. You know, when Ted Cruz went to Washington, the first thing he did was what? What he said he was going to do. He filed a bill to repeal Obamacare, didn't he? And the Washington establishment ridiculed him for doing that. But isn't it refreshing to have someone you send to an office and they do what they said they're going to do? That's the kind of thing that happens when you are involved and you're engaged. And that's why I believe so strongly in the future of our great state. And that's why I'm committed to running for Lieutenant Governor in 2014. It's been a privilege to serve. I've been in every hotly elected contestant. I've been the underdog. I was elected to the Palestine City Council when I was 25 years old. We had 3 city managers in 2 years. That's not good. You get written up in large newspapers around the state when that happens. We're written up in the Houston Chronicle. We're written up in the Dallas News, and they weren't saying good things. And it's Palestine. It's about 2 hours north of here. I get accused of being from Palestine from time to time. I tell them Palestine is a little bit farther to the east than what Palestine is. But I got involved because my high school ag teacher came to me and called me actually on the phone on a Saturday morning. I was working. I kind of think there's 6 good days to work, and I try to use them all. And he said, "We want you to run for city council." And I said, "Thanks, but no thanks. I'm trying to get a business started. I'm trying to get a family going, and I need to work." We had to work. My father worked in a glass factory for 36 years, and never once was it, what can someone else do for you? It's, you need to work hard, you need to be honest. It wasn't a matter of if you go to college, it was a matter of when you go to college. And he instilled us in those values, and I'm very appreciative for that, but I needed to work. And I'll never forget the words that my high school ed teacher shared with me on the phone that morning. He got kind of quiet when I told him no. And he said, "We gave to you, and it's time for you to give back." And those words kind of stuck with me. And I think we all need to be involved, whether you're a member of Texas Patriots PAC, you're involved on a community college, you're serving in a school board, you're serving on a city council, or your church building committee. I think that's the thing that distinguishes us in our nation, is that we roll up our sleeves, we get the job done, and we participate very aggressively. That is extremely important. When I think about the Texas of today, I'm obviously very proud. And I know that we are the envy of the nation. Also, though, they ask you the question, what keeps you up at night? What's that one issue that does that? And I got to tell you, it's the Texas of tomorrow that I think about. And I can tell you, I don't want the Texas of tomorrow to look like the Illinois of today, or the Michigan of today, or the California of today. And that's what happens. Things get away from us when we think we've arrived. We think we can, forget about that complacency is what killed the frog, and then we fail to be involved and engaged in the process. Montgomery County has always had a robust election cycle. When I was here, there was a lot of new faces that were involved back in that 2000 race. I think that is a healthy thing, to have new faces, new ideas, to challenge the status quo, because that makes certain that people are being responsive to the taxpayers, and you never forget who is paying the bills. We need that type of philosophy if we're going to have that Texas of tomorrow that we can be proud of, but it won't happen by chance. There are others who have a different idea. Battleground Texas is very real. The Obama machine has moved into our state in 3 weeks' time. They did a 14-city tour. They signed up 32 volunteers. They used the Unitarian Unification Church in Austin's Fellowship Hall to train volunteers. There was an article about that in the Austin American Statesman this last week. And their message is one that has resonated around the nation. I mean, think about the outcome of November. That was painful to do still. It's very depressing. It was a frustrating process, no doubt. And when I think about that election, though, I think, it wasn't just the fact that we lost the White House that was so depressing to us. It wasn't the fact that we thought we were going to win the United States Senate and then we lost the United States Senate that set us back so bad. When I think about it, the real reason that it causes such concern to me is that we have a majority of voters today in this nation that message of class warfare and redistribution of wealth resonated with. We have people that are out there thinking that government is the answer. As a matter of fact, the president was on Fox News. We heard him on the way over here. He's going to be in Austin, Texas Thursday, dragging the sack in our state, sharing his message. And what it really boils down to is there is a sense of entitlement, that people have an expectation that the first default position is that government is going to be there. And that's the exact opposite of the way that you build an economy. That's the exact opposite of the way that you allow for people to have upward mobility, that you can live the American dream. You can do anything you want to do in this country still today if you want to work hard and you want to be involved and you want to be engaged. That's what is at stake when we think about the future of Texas, and the demographics are changing. Any demographer will tell you that we are underrepresented in those that are registered to vote, those that actually turn out to vote, and they know that their model works. I spoke in Ohio representing our team this fall, I think it was October, and the Democrats had a speaker. We were at a place, a lot of people, and he wasn't a very impressive speaker. He really didn't have that good of a message. But you know what he did? Put up on his slides and showed. He showed how they had how many volunteer offices throughout the state of Ohio, how many volunteers that they've recruited. And I thought he was blowing smoke, but they won and we lost Ohio because they got engaged and they really worked. And if we want to hang on to what we have, we've got to work. We have to be engaged. We have to ask people. I've been in the real estate appraisal business and the real estate brokerage business for my entire working career. And when I got a listing, I went out and asked for it. I went out and sold to them that I was going to be the best person to represent them in that real estate transaction. When I got a sale, it's because I worked them, I showed the facts, and we got them signed on the dotted line. We can't forget that we are vulnerable again today, and that we have to work. And we have to demonstrate results when we do that. Now, about 3 decades ago, we had a Democratic congressman in Texas that resigned his seat and ran as a Republican for that seat and won. You remember who that was, right? Phil Graham. Wasn't that about 3 decades ago now? It's hard to believe. He did that. He went to the same people that elected him as a Democrat because he shared his ideas and he shared his vision, and the people followed him. A couple of decades plus ago, we had a Democratic state representative that ran for Commissioner of Agriculture as a Republican and won because he went out to the people of Texas. And as I think back, in 1990, I think he was the only one because Texas was a blue state then. But he won because he articulated, he communicated those ideas. The media today would like the public to think that conservatives want children to starve, right? Isn't that really what they're talking about? But what we're talking about is that every time government grows, it effectively squeezes out families from fulfilling their responsibilities to their family members. When government grows, it effectively squeezes out our churches and faith-based organizations from fulfilling the roles that they can play. And that's what happens when government grows. And when government grows, it limits opportunity. You know, our president is focused on equal outcomes. It's not about equal outcomes. It is about the opportunity to compete. And that's the distinction that we need to make as we move forward in this state, in this nation. If we're going to capture the imagination of Americans and Texans who are being sold something else. I never have been able to trace this 100%, but one of Margaret Thatcher's quotes that she is credited with saying is the only problem with socialism is that sooner or later you run out of other people's money. And that's the reality of a government that does try to do everything. Now, we know that government has a role, and we know that a transportation system to move our people and to move goods is a legitimate role that government needs to be playing. Hadn't been doing too good a job. It took us a long time to drive from Houston to get to the Woodlands this afternoon. I gave a speech a couple of months ago and I said, anybody driven through Austin, Texas lately? One guy yelled out in the back, I hadn't driven through Austin, but I've sat through there. And if you've been on I-35, you know what he's talking about. It doesn't move. I mean, it just shuts down. So we have to find a way to fulfill our capacity issues in transportation because it has economic consequences. And we need one thing is to end diversions in state government of dollars that have been going to other functions that should be going to build roads. And it's kind of hard to go to the public with anything else until you do that. Because what credibility are you going to believe if the legislature says we need new revenues to do this when they're not spending the revenues you give them for what you gave it to them for in the first place? Amen. That's the kind of policies that will ruin us in the future. If we're not honest with the public, we don't have transparency in that process, and you know that what you're sending to Austin is being spent for that purpose. Water issues are very real. We have a real water crisis in Texas today. I was speaking in Dallas a few weeks ago in the Petroleum Club, and a gentleman stood up and said, I disagree. We don't have a water crisis. We have plenty of water. And I said, well, it's hard to explain to that school who has been trucking in water for the last year because their water source dried up. It's hard to explain to those 25 communities that I've worked with as Commissioner of Agriculture whose water intake the lake level has declined so low that they can't extend their intake valve to take water out of the lake. It's hard to explain to a company that I met with that has 200 employees in Texas, 16 of them are PhDs. They have been having trouble getting the water they need for their research and growth that they do. They told me if we don't solve that this year, that they're going to go to their board and recommend that they divest their interest in Texas and move to another state that doesn't have these problems. So these issues are real. The rainy day fund is not a gravy train that people can just run toward like a piggy bank and spend any way you want to. You need to have a thoughtful plan about addressing these issues. You need to make certain that if the rainy day fund is there, you have a good debate about what that fund needs to be to maintain the economic stability of Texas and a sound financial bond rating, number one, before you discuss anything else. You need to make certain that when we have major catastrophes like we have in hurricanes and we have in wildfires and you have these other issues, that source is there, what Texas voters said that fund needed to be for. You need to have those discussions early before you get to Austin. You need to have them in places just like this, in the Woodlands, and in Lufkin, and in Abilene, and in Midland, and all across Texas. Because then you can make your decisions on where you want our state to go. But these issues are very real. These issues are the ones that we're going to be competing on in the future on how we're going to get the job done. And I got to tell you that I believe that innovation and creativity is the way that we're going to solve these problems. As Commissioner of Agriculture, I can tell you that water usage by agriculture alone from 1974 to 2010 has decreased by 42%. All while yields have increased substantially, greater production has occurred using less water. It's because of better seed varieties, it's because of modern farming practices, and it's because of better irrigation equipment. Do any of you have a lawn sprinkler in your yard? Do you set a timer on it? And it goes on at 4 o'clock in the morning and goes off at 6, right? I've got a thing on the side of my roof that's supposed to tell it not to go on when it's watering it, when it rains. Of course, it hadn't rained in a while. But it's hanging down, so it doesn't work too good right now. I got a letter the other day from a gentleman who has a product that he wants to sell. Wish I had time to think about investing in it. For residential lawns, it's a product that would not turn your sprinkler on because you set it by a clock. It would turn your sprinkler on based on the soil moisture content in your yard. Isn't that a novel idea? Give your yard a drink when it really needs it. Those are the types of products. It's innovation. It's not thinking that we've accomplished all that we can do. And it's certainly not when it comes to education and meeting the needs of our kids. If spending alone was the answer to public education, Washington, D.C. would be turning out an Einstein every other day because they spend more than anybody else in their school system. Finding new ways to educate our kids, thinking about different methodologies to get that information to them. I met with a gentleman who runs a school that he says, our children don't go to the next course when they get a 70% on their tests. Our children go to the next course when they master the content of the course that they were in. Isn't that a great idea to think about when we move forward? I'm a big believer in our schools. I think there's one message that kids ought to receive when they enter our school system. That message is success. Success if you're going to go on and get a 4-year degree. Success if you're going to go to a community college. Success if you're going to enter the workforce. But success is our standard. And that's what we want to equip you for. And that's what we want to prepare you for. And I want us to make certain that we're sending that message and not one of just pushing people along, spending your dollars, and not getting results. It ought to frustrate you as a taxpayer to know that 50% of the kids that are enrolled in community college coming out of high schools today require remedial training in math and reading. Those are unacceptable results, and we cannot expect to continue to prosper if that status quo is left alone. As Commissioner of Agriculture, I enjoyed serving in the legislature. When I served in the legislature, I carried the constitutional amendment defining marriages between one man and one woman in this state, passed by 76% of the voters. I believe in traditional families. I think that is who we are, and I don't apologize for that. When I was in the legislature, I carried a bill reforming our failed workers' compensation system. I'm not going to name the name of the company, but they deliver packages daily. They came to me and said their workers' comp bill is more than their gas bill monthly in Texas because the system was so broken. Knew we had to fix it, so got involved and worked on that issue. I was proud to help champion the rights of private property owners because I believe the right to own and use property is the cornerstone of our economic success. And we cannot allow loopholes in the law, adverse court cases to usurp the rights of private property owners. Our Constitution allows for eminent domain. We recognize growth has to occur, but it must be done in a way that protects the rights of landowners. As Commissioner of Agriculture, we administer a lot of different programs. Have you filled up at the gas pump lately? When you do, look on there, you should see a sticker on there that has my name on it. I told my staff to take my name off if gas goes to $4 a gallon. I told them to put my picture on there if it's $2 a gallon. That made them nervous. Have you seen a lot of new stations around here lately? A lot of growth, particularly in this part of Texas. The old model is just to go hire more people to go inspect those pumps to make certain that you're getting every ounce of gasoline you pay for. And that's the traditional model that's been used in Texas. We made a shift in my agency, and we're going from that old traditional model to ask you to pay more so that we can hire more people. And we're going to a risk-based analysis. Because if you have a 98% compliance rating, that every time we look at you, you're doing everything right, why do we need to be looking at you all the time? Whereas your competitor across the street who has a 65% compliance rating, we need to be putting our resources toward that person to make certain that we're protecting consumers. So we're looking at data now. We're looking at a risk-based analysis and are being able to not go out and ask you to pay for more government employees just because that's the old model way of doing things. Health and Human Services ran a program that came down from USDA. We looked at what we were doing at the Texas Department of Agriculture with the school lunch programs. We asked the legislature to move that program from HHSC to the Texas Department of Agriculture. They were doing that program with 118 FTEs. We did it with 100. The last session of the legislature, they moved an agency to us, something that I'd been advocating for quite some time. We performed those same functions with 18 fewer FTEs and 34% less administrative costs. This is what we need to be doing. This is the way we need to be looking if we're going to make a difference. Now, I've talked probably longer than I should have already because I want to answer questions that you might have, and I'm going to go to you first, Fred. Okay. I do want to mention one quick thing before we go to Q&A, and that is this. Our federal government today is struggling with trying to find a way to reform our failed immigration system. The Gang of Eight has introduced legislation that I got to tell you, if it's that or no deal, I say no deal. You may be thinking, how involved is the Commissioner of Agriculture in Texas? And let me just tell you very quickly how I got involved in this process. Landowners along the border reached out to me because of my work on private property owner rights, who are literally being chased off their land by violent drug cartels who are moving drugs all across our nation. Texas just happens to be the front line, but it is a national security breach. I reached, in East Texas where I grew up, it didn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, you're usually pretty pro-law enforcement, and we fought about other things. This administration rebuffed our pleas rebuff the stories of our farmers and ranchers, I retained 2 retired generals. 4-star retired General Barry McCaffrey, who was the drug czar under Clinton, and retired Major General Bob Scales, who's the former commandant of the U.S. Army War College. He kind of goes on Fox News as an analyst. So I got both ends of the spectrum and had them make an assessment, and they said the cartels are seeking to gain a foothold inside the United States of America. Who wouldn't respond? Our president wouldn't, I can tell you that. It was a real tragedy. So I ended up writing a book about it called Broken Borders, Broken Promises. So if you're looking for that gift for that special someone in your life, Mother's Day is this weekend. It's a good gift. All proceeds are being donated to causes to secure our border and reform our failed immigration system. But I encourage you to look at that, because I believe we can solve this problem without compromising conservative principles. And I've got to tell you, citizenship is the thing that we hold most dear as a nation. And citizenship is being used as a political poker chip in this process. It's convenient citizenship, and I think that is an affront to every American. It's an affront to those 500, 600, 700,000 new Americans each year that go through our legal immigration, assimilation, and naturalization process. There is a better way, and it needs to be fixed. And I'm going to tell you why, and I'm answering your question, Trey. We've got about 18,500 Border Patrol agents on our southern border from Texas to California. Texas has 6 border agents per border mile. Arizona, New Mexico, and California have 14 border agents per border mile. Last year in Texas, almost half of those apprehended in our nation were apprehended in Texas. 40% of all narcotics that the CBP confiscated were confiscated in Texas. In the Rio Grande Valley sector alone, over half of the people that were apprehended were countries from other than Mexico. This is a national security breach. It's impacting the sovereignty of our nation. We know that millions of people are trying to get in. We only have 18,500 Border Patrol. We need a legal method of entry for those that want to be a part of our workforce. We need to go after the drug cartels with bullets and badges, and we need to manage our workforce with pencil and paper in a very efficient, economic way of doing things. Every American that wants a job should be first in line to get that job, but folks, people are not relocating to California to pick strawberries or Washington State to pick apples that are dropping to the ground, and they're not relocating to the Rio Grande Valley to pick the best grapefruit you've ever eaten, if you hadn't eaten a Texas grapefruit. We can fix this. We can do it the right way. I would encourage you to take a look at the book and give me your feedback. You got a book with you, Blaine? If you don't like what's inside of it, hope you like the cover. My wife did the Statue of Liberty. She's a very talented person, and take a look at that. One quote, and then I'm answering questions. In the early 20th century, G.K. Chesterton penned these words that I think kind of defines why we're all here tonight. He said, you know, the true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what's behind him. And I know that's why you're involved, because you love our state, we love our nation, we love the ideas and principles upon which it was founded. Thank you for fighting to preserve it.